on his face, demanding more explanations from Juho because of his abnormal attitude towards him. Chin understood a little that this was his fault due to the fact that he had a too young body and a very bright mind, and the owner did not want to lag behind him in terms of skills. Observing the amazing transformations, Chin said that the teacher would not just leave this, and Juho would definitely answer. He also talked about the fact that he might even be tortured before execution, because it is an extremely bad concession to do this to children. Juho closed his eyes and said that the teacher was not a very good person, and he did not think that he would let him die like that. When the teacher lost her temper, it seemed as if an entire city and oceans of emotions were pouring out directly onto everyone around her. Chin, refuting everything, said that he did not believe in the teacher's bloodthirstiness and refuted all the words. But Juho stood there silently. Deep down, he understood that their teacher was not such an ideal person, and it was very easy to piss him off. Juho expressed his dissatisfaction with Chin's arrival. They were both doctors and could discuss something, but Juho liked peace. He did not like unnecessary words. Chin observed the meditation. He understood that he was not welcome here, but he still decides to be alone with Juho. In his memoirs, Juho recalled how the teacher loved Chin more and treated him better. It was unpleasant for him to remember. The children's teacher was very friendly and cheerful. He never became discouraged and did not try to earn a certain remark or please one of the guys. After his memories, Juho immediately decided to express everything that had accumulated over all the years of study. Chin and Juho told each other about all their experiences. Each reprimanded the other about wrong actions. Chin is tired of these disputes. He stubbornly hinted that Juho should stop pointlessly talking about trifles. Juho exhaled and agreed with Chin. He no longer wanted to continue the futile debate. Juho quickly turned around and went his way, thinking about his next plans. Chin did not appreciate this gesture. Juho folded his palms behind his back and silently walked through the bamboo forest. Chin was surprised at the sudden end of the conversation. Ear, while walking, glanced at Chin with only one eye. He didn't want to talk to him anymore. Chin didn't immediately understand what was happening. After all, because of a simple conversation, for some reason his acquaintance turned around and went in his own direction. It seemed to him that Juho and his entire conversation were too rude. He disrespects him. Suddenly, among the bamboo forest, a warrior landed in front of Chin, who, thanks to the guy's hard work, became powerful. Everything in the forest trembled after landing. You could hear it even up to the mountains. The warrior quickly collected himself and approached Chin to thank him for all the work he had done. In front of Chin stood a warrior who did not look so beautiful at the beginning. Chin was surprised. He could not believe such a successful result of his work. Chin was overjoyed at what he saw in front of him. After all, his first experiment would have been successful, and they would have thanked him for it. The warrior immediately began to thank China and said that he would not remain in his debt. He said that he would be ready to help him in any situation at any time. Chin was surprised by this speech. After all, everything he did was absolutely free. He couldn't charge anyone. Alone in the bamboo forest, Chin and the warrior could not find words to talk further. Suddenly, the warrior got down on one knee. This was a surprise. Chin did not understand what would happen. The warrior quickly took a knee and swore to Chin that he would always serve him faithfully. This is how he will try to repay him. The guy immediately replied that he would be given the task right away. He will try to complete them as quickly as possible. From what he heard, no one had ever offered him such proposals. He always worked for good and goodness and not for salary. A smile appeared on Chin's face. He wanted to joke with the warrior so that he would understand what he was swearing. Chin immediately told the warrior to get up from his knee. It was unpleasant for him when people bowed down before him like that. The young man also added that he did not need such services and the warrior could safely go about his business. Chin felt very uncomfortable, to which the warrior replied that he could ask him for anything, and he will boldly and without hesitation rush to carry out any order. The warrior told Chin that he would repay him for all his kindness, even if it took his whole life. Chin was even frightened by these words. The boy wanted to convince the warrior that he did not need any payment. That's why he said that the payment for treatment had long since passed. The teacher probably received it. Chin also added that he just wanted to see the warrior's strength. The warrior stubbornly insisted that he be given any task so that he could somehow repay Chin for the treatment course. The doctor wanted to think through everything in detail, but he had little time. And again, Chin was confused. But he couldn't find the words. Meanwhile, the warrior listened carefully and looked stubbornly at the guy. Chin asked the warrior to help him reach a new level of skill. He also helped the warrior save his daughter. Chin had not yet completed the conversation, but the warrior had already shouted out that he was ready to serve faithfully until the end of his days and repay at least part of the debt. Chin again asked the warrior if he was ready to truly help him achieve a new level of skill, to which he replied that he had no other choice. Chin and the warrior came to the local hospital where Chin and many doctors treat everyone who needs help. Chin noted that the head teacher could offer the warrior a job at the hospital because he was surprised by the offer. Chin added that by working in a hospital, the warrior would no longer have to look for a place to work, but would only need to deliver medicine and herbs. He noted that this is the safest job in the entire area. The warrior sincerely thanked him for the place in the hospital. He will no longer have to show any fighting abilities to earn even a penny for living. Chin was glad that he helped his friend. He provides the warrior with a salary and a place to work. The guys walked across a bridge built over a river that flowed near the hospital. The warrior said that he did not think how kind and merciful Chin is. During the conversation, the warrior agreed to the proposal in order to repay the rank's actions. Chin bowed to the warrior and said that he did not have enough experience to tell him all the details in the hospital. The warrior said that he didn't know anything here at all. During his tour of the hospital, Chin told the warrior about their teacher. He is the top man in the hospital. He gives orders to everyone and hires everyone. 2 daughters of the head physician also work at the hospital. They replace many doctors. Therefore, this is a very profitable solution. Despite the fact that the hospital treats people, they also endow the patients with incredible healing powers, who later become real warriors. In the hospital, everything was as always. Patients came to them, they were examined and prescribed the correct treatment. And, in their free time, the doctors walked along the green lawns and discussed everything they had experienced with each other. There was a war going on for a long time in the region where the hospital was located, but all peace treaties ensured the safety of the hospital. Subsequently, the warrior came to see the chief doctor. They had to discuss everything with each other, and the doctor had to make sure whether the warrior was suitable as a hospital employee. The warrior immediately decided to discuss everything with the head physician. He immediately replied that a friend recommended him to work at the hospital. The chief physician listened carefully to the warrior. He was pleased to hear compliments about the hospital. He's already ready to accept a warrior for a position. Before the appointment, the head doctor decided to show courtesy. I decided to order my future employee a small portion of food. Meanwhile, night came and everyone went to their rooms. Not a sound was heard on the hospital grounds. Chin had time for a long break, but he decided not to stop and continue to accumulate skills in order to rise in rank. Chin felt the energy that was endowing him. He understood that at this rate, he would have to train for at least 3 years. He needs to pick up the pace of his training even faster and faster. Suddenly, new red magic lit up throughout the room. This was one of Chin's achievements. He mastered a new type of magic, but he still had 4 more similar masteries ahead of him. During rest, Chin always decides to meditate for at least a short time in order to find peace and calm down, and also discuss in his imagination all the events he has experienced. Chin's imagination always revolved around constant training. He always remembered how he constantly beat stones and trees, but after a while they scattered in his hands. During the circulation of energy, he even mentioned ancient times. This was the only way the guy could remember something from the second world. Chin subsequently exhaled and completed his meditation. He remembered several moments from his previous life. The chief doctor and warrior, who had been interviewing Yoo-hoo for a long time, even managed to bring a small snack according to the doctor's orders. The doctor decided to tell the warrior in detail what superpowers they teach in the hospital so that the entire team can master them. At the time of the end of the interview, Chin had already completed his training and was unable to master the new magic, so he would have to practice for a long time on it. The guy couldn't describe this failure in words. In the conversation between the chief physician and the warrior, the doctor decided to introduce and talk about Yuha. He added that he rarely undergoes operations, because when he sees blood, he feels uneasy. The doctor added that when Yuha becomes ill, he begins to assist him. This works out quite well. Maybe he is already quite skilled in this area. Chin was all disappointed and upset. He realized that he needed to train more and more, but he has no time at all. For him, it is physically impossible. Morning came, and the whole hospital woke up. The guards went to their places, and the doctors began to go about their business. Subsequently, there was a rapid commotion throughout the hospital. No one understood what had happened. As it turned out, Yoo-hoo and Chin met. He furiously hit the wall with his hand and shouted, "Why did you tell my secret to the head doctor? Now he will always walk around the hospital like a clown." Yoo-hoo was very excited and couldn't find words. He wanted to learn the rank, but his device did not allow him to do so. Meanwhile, the rank's face was treacherous. He persistently tried to take revenge for all his actions, in order to teach him a lesson. Each time he succeeded even better and better. During a working conversation with the doctor, the rank replied that Yuho would engage in non-combat art, but he wanted to learn medical art in order to save more patients. The chief doctor immediately asked him if it was true, to which he was very ashamed to answer. He didn't want to tell the truth, but Yuho didn't want to learn martial arts. The chief doctor replied that he thought that he would develop a curiosity about saving people and medicine. The doctor always thought that Yuho would not betray his interests. Meanwhile, Yuho did not even want to look directly into the eyes of everyone gathered. He was ashamed of himself. He didn't understand why Qin was so insidiously exposing all his secrets and telling everything to the higher authorities. Meanwhile, Qin was all happy. Everything went according to his plan. He revealed every secret to Juhu for every unjust act he did. Qin also answered the doctor, "Since you have a weak immune system and you get sick often, Yuha and I will join forces to improve your health." The doctor was very surprised, but happy. The second doctor asked Yuha if he really wanted to practice medical technology in order to treat people in the future. Ear turned red and couldn't find words. The doctor was happy. All the rank's jokes were funny to him, but he was pleased that someone decided to take care of him. And Juho couldn't find the words. He was very ashamed of himself and his secrets. It was the first time he had seen the chief physician have such a cheerful expression on his face, precisely because of ridicule. But meanwhile, the rank was happy. Juho could not believe that after a few words from this young man, he had to justify himself and blush in front of the doctor. He didn't understand why he was telling all this. Juho decided to ask the rank a second time, "If you're not scared at all, then just tell me why you're telling all my secrets and humiliating me in front of the chief doctor." Juho closed his eyes and waited for a long time for a startling answer, but after a long time he still did not receive what he expected. Yuho knew that the rank was not as stupid as it seemed, and he could interfere in different situations for the sake of ridicule. Meanwhile, the official not only lowered his head, but also did not answer. A single tear fell on Yuha's face, and he asked himself what his goal was. He suggested that his goal may have been to reduce his control over the hospital. Juho began to give a short lecture in which he said that the struggle for power in such places is very common, but something told him that the reason was completely different. Yuho noticed that Qin was trembling all over with fear, but he decided to make such decisions. Juho painfully admitted that the rank had a completely different motive. Qin, with a trembling all over his body, nevertheless admitted that he had a completely different motive for which he was acting. Therefore, he does not humiliate Yuha for the sake of power. It was humiliating for the ear to admit this, but his authority has rapidly declined, and now he does not have such influence on the hospital and is not considered a prestigious person. But Juho still decided to find out why he was capable of such actions. But Qin seemed numb and did not answer. Qin was sweating. He gradually collected his thoughts and decided that he would be responsible for everything he said, because he did not have any bad intentions towards Yuha. He wasn't going to just be the victim in this conversation, and said he didn't have any ill intentions towards the infirmary or the head doctor. Yuha's eye trembled at the moment because he did not expect such a hot answer from a small child. His mind thought that Qin would just cry and beg for forgiveness. The quarrel was so loud that it could be heard several houses from the place where they were located, and they sorted things out among themselves. It was already getting dark, and their screams continued to be heard around the entire settlement. They still could not come to a common understanding of the situation and continued to blame each other. Grimacing and looking unoperatively in Qin's direction, the rookie doctor continued to demonstrate his superiority over him. And having understood the essence of the situation, the member in turn said that he needed a nurse who would assist him in difficult times. Snacking in surprise and bowing his fragile head, Yuho decided to ask again who exactly he needed. In this world that Qin was in, there was no such thing as a nurse or nurse. In an ordinary doctor, students helped him. We can say that the role of nurses and nurses was performed by primary doctors. Excitedly and frankly, Qin continued to say that the time would soon come when he would have to take a scalpel in his hands, and he would need an assistant who would try his best. Sighing heavily, Juho asked if he was being offered to become a nurse who would help the chief doctor. He sadly continued to say that he was Qin's enemy and why he should be kept close. Their conversation gradually became emotional, and Qin said that there were qualities that others did not have. Uka was still in a slight shock, and there was a slight tremor in his body since he still did not understand why Qin was treating him so well after everything that had happened. Chin seriously continued to argue why he wanted Yu-ho to be his nurse. He was very resilient, stands on his feet all day long, carries out orders for patients from the infirmary, and does hard work. Secondly, he is cold-blooded and very successfully able to perform complex operations and stop the bleeding of seriously wounded patients, giving them life. It often happens that the patient is in critical condition, and a good response is needed to make an important decision and save a precious life. After observing Juho, we can say that he is a trustworthy and capable doctor who has a bright and good future. In turn, Yuhu just stood coldly and listened to everything that Chin told him, but he would need to study more medicine in order to progress. Focusing on this and encouraging Juho, he said that medicine is the most important part, and this is the key to people's health. He continued to attack Yua, and concluding his entire long speech, he said that this is the most ideal candidate for the post of nurse, performing his duties perfectly. In addition, he would like to know more about the technique that Yuho used during one of the operations on a seriously wounded person, because these were unusual martial arts that he had completely mastered. The clouds moved in more and more, and the dark night suddenly fell. Under the roof of one of the houses, they continued to discuss the motives of each. Chin also said that ultimately their result should be to save the seriously ill life of a teacher who generally does not spare himself. No matter how much the rank pondered with his fragile head and bright mind, possible candidates for this post, no one else came to his mind except Juho. Lowering his head, he realized that he did not treat Chin that way at all and considered him his competitor, who only wished him harm. His judgment was false. He said humiliatingly, "I wanted to kill you." But he hasn't decided whether the decision is final. At that moment, Chin turned cold and did not react to this speech, trying not to escalate the situation between them. Having missed it and ignored it, he said that to save the teacher, Yuho would do anything. And Chin was also ready to do anything to save a person, even if it was necessary to risk his life. Closing his eyes and trying to think, he asked himself the same question many times. Why? Why is he so kind? He did not understand how it was happening, that he felt how this little boy could suppress his will. But he didn't want to talk about it so easily. First, you had to become his nurse. But don't kill him until they cure the teacher. And as a result, if they can't cope, they do. As you want, did you say? Or... Sighing with great difficulty, he did not understand what kind of sophism this was, and his attitude now towards Chin was completely different. And now the terrible thoughts that had been before did not even occur to him. And cheerfully conveying honor, raising his voice, Chin said that now it would be much more difficult for him to finish him off. He was going to tell him why. Namely because his confidant, namely the demon archer, reached the level of Huegen and acquired the absolutely incredible power of a real warrior. And jokes with him were already bad. The boy's arguments were very convincing, and Yuho stood frozen, swallowing saliva and realizing that his plan would be absolutely unsuccessful. And now he has no other choice. Realizing this, Chin thought that now all the trump cards were on his side and could easily negotiate with his candidate on good terms for a job. When Chin made his final speech, he said, "Either become my nurse or take my life right now." Tightening his hands into a titanic fist, everything seemed extremely complicated and strange to him, and under such pressure it was very difficult to make a decision. He understood that Chin really wanted to save the teacher. It was difficult to say whether it was affection for him or madness. But Chin's actions were very structured and reasonable and correctly directed to achieve his stated goal. The child doctor's honesty frightened Juho very much. It seemed that he controlled his entire life and every next decision. Inhaling and exhaling heavily, he felt dizzy, and he did not understand how it was all happening in such a way that was not in his direction. And in the end, standing quietly, Yuhu said, "I surrender." He could only admit his defeat in his moral and physical condition. Having cheerfully opened his eyes, he almost did not shout out, "Hooray!" but cheerfully raising his hands with happiness, he felt that he would succeed. However, he still finds it funny that he doesn't make such an offer of cooperation to a man who wanted to kill him at any moment. Cheerfully raising his head, Chin said that he did not want to show mercy or forgive in this way. He simply considered this option the most profitable. But there was one small condition. When they were in places with other people, he would behave as usual. It was to his advantage to be considered small, Chin Cho Hai, and at that moment Yuho had absolutely no idea what their behavior would be like in private. "Seriously? Don't forget you said you were hitting me. Why on earth should I treat you well?" His words seemed very piercing and painful. As he was leaving, he thought that his work would be much more difficult than what nurses do in South Korea. With his priceless intelligence, he continued to say, "I will save people's lives, and from today, you will need to learn a lot. If Juho has any claim, Qin told him to kill him right now before it's too late. He sighed with difficulty and stood in a stupor. Realizing that Juho would not do this again, he continued to smile and walk towards the hospital to do his everyday things. At this point, most likely the dialogue was over, but they dispersed to go about their routine work that was entrusted to them. Bowing his head, Juho could no longer understand how a small child with amazing doctor skills had just laid him on his shoulder blades and demonstrated his boundless mind. It seemed that he had finally begun to understand why such a powerful demon archer would swear allegiance to such a small, inconspicuous boy. At first it seemed to him that the rank was an ordinary braggart who wanted fame, but now the attitude towards him had completely changed. Bowing his head, which now seemed swollen from the exaggeration of the information he had received, it was difficult to control himself at this moment. And the rank spoke cheerfully. He was scared, but he was not afraid and managed to lure the enemy to his side and make him his worker. In the epicenter of a small city, flocks of birds were circling where they planned to land for rest. The birds continued to circle carefree. One of the leading birds had something tied on his right leg, but he was rapidly going down. The city was quite large and strong, and from a distance it was almost impossible not to see it. Large towers and observation decks made their presence felt. One of the methods of transmitting information that people in that world used in order to gain new knowledge was training. It didn't take long for the news of Cheon-hee's treatment method to spread among all the people, and especially the doctors, who were delighted with it. They could not even imagine the techniques and skill that were described in the works of a small child, who in another world was a fairly experienced doctor with a lot of experience. Her amazing technique was recorded and officially published at the highest level. There was rapid development. It was information about the patient's condition that was given and treatment described. Now serious illnesses and even internal organs could be treated in the infirmary. The document quickly spread among the masses of people said that absolutely everything could be treated, from the liver to the spleen. Examples of successful operations and treatment of patients were also given. Seeing such extraordinary progress in medicine, people were shocked, but they didn't know how to react to this. But it was almost impossible for ordinary mortals to get into the infirmary, because they only accept those who belong to Chongfu, and this was extremely worrying. But people were extremely concerned about the published document, because the person who wrote it was very young, and he was not even 20 years old. They could not believe that he was able to identify such damaged organs. Some of the workers who read this even wanted to return to Peck for a year to learn from the boy and his new method of treatment. The doctor suggested sending carrier pigeons there in order to find out more details. Panic continued to dominate absolutely throughout society due to the possible onset of emergency treatment methods and the decline of other hospitals. But what worried them was that the combat archer had achieved extremely high and powerful strength that would allow him to compete with any warrior in their world. News continued to travel between people by word of mouth at a very high speed. Village after town learned about a new level of medicine. Subsequently, families that had entered into agreements with other hospitals began to think about switching to treatment in the middle of the year, where everything seemed much better. Next, the story moved to the Huaju Infirmary, from the walls of which the deadly screams of angry doctors were heard, who were extremely unhappy with the current situation. Hitting the table hard, they went crazy, not understanding how it was possible to achieve such high progress in such a short period of time without having any special advantages. The chief doctor continued to rage and shout at absolutely everyone because his infirmary was inferior in all respects to Per Rina. The worried faces of the service staff knew they were in trouble. They are getting worse and worse every day, but a large number of people who brought them profit are deviating from them. The most respected doctors who were in this infirmary sat and tried to somehow correct the current situation and prevent patients from leaving. Their leader was extremely evil. This was an official from the Kwacha infirmary, whose name was Ma Jin Chihu. The entered forehead seemed now shabby with anger. He was also extremely angry about the news about the demon archer. None of them believed in such a strong transformation in a very short period of time. It was almost impossible. One of the doctors said that we needed to calm down a little and take a breath, because all the common people had already been discussing this lately. But the doctor wanted to justify herself, and to say that everyone knows that holding a patient for 10 days with severe injuries to internal organs is not the responsibility of hospitals, because they did not sign such documents. It seemed that the leader had recovered his spirit a little and was no longer going to continue to rage, but the impulse to always be the first did not allow him to calm down. The strangest thing was that the magic archer first turned to the Huaju infirmary, where he was not given help and refused to do so due to the fact that he had contact with Safa. One of the elders who worked in the infirmary suddenly exploded, tried to close all the brothers, but he was absolutely sure that all this was set up by another infirmary for popularization. In the background, discussions continued that there is no place in medicine in the championship. But the statement of another hospital turned out to be very competitive and seemed similar to advertising. But in the letter in which the announcement was made, there was not a single word about the Huaju infirmary. There was only minimal information about what condition the patient was in when he was treated. They continued to revise this document, full of mystery, in order to find a hint of a solution to such an amazing situation. But then one voice called from the walls of the infirmary saying, "Stop it! I'll tell you the whole truth." Huaju was like a dream who was in his office and was raging. Having done some research, one of the researchers could find out that the patients were the daughter of the archer Wang Ka-yen. But until now, the chief doctor could not understand why it was necessary to take such high risks and go on such an incredible adventure, since accepting a patient who almost had to was to die before no one accepted. Also exploring the situation that had developed around him, the spy said that because of this situation, many infirmaries were in a state of panic and were almost going bankrupt, and several clans began to show interest in a new method of treating the most famous infirmary. Because of the gnashing of his teeth, the doctor understood that his rating was rapidly falling straight towards zero, and most likely they would no longer be able to compete at approximately the same levels. Hanging his head, the loser said that he did not have enough courage to meet Mr. Kaksong, but he was sure that if he came in such a situation, it would not end well for his reputation. Continuing to escalate the situation, the spy said that the situation was very strange because until now, the Pekrin Infirmary was not strong in performing such difficult operations, and this announcement highly praised the medical skills of the student Chincho He. However, there is a possibility that Pekrin used officially unconfirmed methods of treating patients. Looking at the spy so strangely, the doctor was very surprised and even a little scared because of the inability to compete. He also suggested that they could simply use the patient's body to try unofficial techniques on him, and this is how they could inflict losses on their reputation. He nervously knocked on the wooden table and remembered that he could somehow overcome this situation and put his infirmary above its competitors. The speaker continued to sweat and worry as he looked at his employer. The news was not over for him yet. He just stood there and waited for the time to leave. Laughing and yelling merrily, the doctor told their team to send several doctors to the Peklin Infirmary in order to examine everything and see with their own eyes, and to send those who have a good tongue so that they find out everything. But not knowing how best to do this, the spy decided to ask again for some reason to better disguise this special operation for reconnaissance. The doctor said that Pek Rin endangered the patient's life by using extreme techniques on him, and that is why charges of abuse of duty should be filed. Smiling cheerfully, the spy thought that it was very good that he worked for this particular doctor, and such bright ideas came to him in such difficult times as now. The spy continued to cheerfully say that he would not let his employer down and would learn all the valuable information he needed to win this race. The head doctor said it was great. Everything was thought out perfectly. They wanted to tell their doctors when they would arrive at another hospital because they were worried about the patient's condition. They definitely won't be kicked out because of this. They somehow wanted to raise their authority among other hospitals so that more people would turn to them for treatment. The basic plan should be based on the fact that their doctors were very worried about the patient's health and were forced to come for a checkup to make sure everything was fine. Already leaving the head doctor's room, the spy disturbed him again and decided to ask again. What if they do kick them out? They won't let them in. Smiling, he said that then this would become the basis for notifying people that that infirmary was performing its services and experimenting on ordinary people. But in this case, clients, having signed contracts with the Havalja infirmary, will no longer go to another infirmary. But it was necessary to prepare very well. Also, while bowing, the spy said that he would report on all preparations and report on the progress of the operation that had begun. All over the world, everything was changing very quickly. Absolutely everything but nature remained euphonious and unchanged. I loved to enjoy the scenery. A small rank with an extremely large imprinted potential inside his soul was in the middle of a clearing near one of the plantings, and enjoyed the amazing weather. He was very focused on himself, trying to meditate to further develop his skills, which were so at an extremely high level. From a distance, one could hear how different potentials of energy were seething in his small body, and trying to find out. Also, accumulating such a large amount of energy within himself, he realized that his teacher's condition was much worse than he thought. But he still lacked the internal energy and understanding of the Qing'e technique to perform the operation on his own. He had to think about how best to do this. The little doctor needed to become stronger very quickly, so he had to spend a lot of time meditating on his own. Thinking about it carefully, he remembered how he had helped the archer increase his progress. He had to repeat the same process that occurred when increasing the energy of an archer in the bamboo jungle. Sitting and remembering this process, its energy continued to permeate the trees, spreading further through the forest and increasing its epicenter of action. This indicated that the energy in his body was increasing. Now he could accumulate more energy. All that remained was to learn how to use it correctly for your own purposes, because without use it is generally fruitless. Qin could control any energy that could exist in the world. Now he had even mastered fire energy, which was extremely difficult. His hands sounded like hot fire, but he didn't feel it because he had been practicing such skills for quite a long time, wanting to save the life of his dear teacher. Only the energy in his hands increased over time, and control over it became increasingly easier, permeating every molecule and every nerve of the body. The process became increasingly easier. He wanted to try to combine several very heavy energies into one whole to increase his test, to try to reach a critical level of energy concentration. The little doctor wanted to hit this powerful energy to see if he could successfully control and manage it at a decent level. His gaze was very self-confident and focused as he wanted to make maximum progress in order to use his powers skillfully. In energy attacks, leg movements also played an important role, since they helped to transfer the weight of the entire body for proper concentration. His small fist was filled with titanic strength that seemed capable of tearing the earth in half, ready to strike quickly. And having swung, he decided to direct the flow of his energy, which he had controlled for several hours through meditation, to test its strength and stability. The explosion, like a tornado of pure energy combination, tried to attack the tree under Qin's instructions to test its abilities. They managed to embody some of the energy into wood and test one of their theories regarding bodies charged with energy that they could not previously control. Coming closer, Qin wanted to carefully examine the tree bark after it had been treated with his concentration of forces. Approaching the igniting bark, he said, "Wow," but was a little surprised by his mastery of the energy, since before he could not even imagine that he could do this. He was very pleased that this combination could create significantly more powerful blows that could be used for a variety of purposes. However, long periods of meditation resulted in numerous burns, which now required surgical treatment for normal functioning. He was extremely careful but still suffered severe burns. It was necessary to foresee such a development of events and take care of your health. He looked at the terrible burns and realized that they were the second. If he doesn't process them on time, it could be very bad. It's good that he mastered different types of magic and knew how to use the 5-element techniques. He could avoid bacterial contamination and reduce fever with water magic. The energy of the tree, which he was able to absorb, helped restore damaged skin due to long-term accumulation of energy. Now his arm didn't look very perfect, but thanks to his mastery of the elements, in 2 days everything would be completely healed, and he could continue to develop his skills. Now he needed to master the 4th element, since he had already mastered the magic of fire, water, and tree magic. Smiling and experiencing many emotions from the events of this wonderful time, the rank was ready to expand its potential. Supporting himself on the tree, he tried to get some of the energy from it again in order to quickly restore himself and move on to the next training. For a warrior, training is complete when he is able to break something. Therefore, it was necessary to develop potential and then treat patients. Then they moved to a small town where their inconspicuous hospital, famous throughout the world, is located. In the spacious corridors, people continued to work as if nothing had happened, treating people. They had to do a lot more work because of the amount of advertising. Almost a month had passed since the daughter of the demon archer Wang Kag-en received treatment. Her story took place in an inconspicuous room. There she sat and meditated. Since she was on an hour, this was her method in order to somehow relax herself and lift her spirits. Even though Qingyi Neijia gives restorative powers, it should not be forgotten that the wounds this girl received were very atypical and complex. Until the girl fully recovers, she approaches martial arts practice very responsibly and carefully, which requires great effort to progress. While meditating, thoughts began to come to her mind, but she was attacked, which almost resulted in her death. The girl received numerous terrible blows and could not do anything, losing in the battle with the attacker. According to her, she realized that the attacker was very prepared, and this almost ended her life. She wanted to find him and take revenge. However, the shock she experienced caused her to become extremely agitated, and she was unable to continue concentrating. While her memory of her attacker was vague and it was almost impossible to recognize him, he hid his identity well. This forced her to interrupt her meditation because scary thoughts appeared in her head, interfering with her concentration. Now her body was weakened and breathing heavily. She could not maintain her balance and needed rest after such exertion. After that day, the girl's world collapsed. She did not experience joy in life and passed every day in torment and suffering. Her weakened body seemed ready to disintegrate and fall apart, but she fought to maintain her integrity. This was the reality, and she could not seem it, since she had already gone through a long path in rehabilitation and was extracted from the other world. In this room, the young man experienced extremely severe suffering. She felt that there was a huge stone on her heart that was preventing her from living a full life. There were more and more patients in the hospital courtyard, and they came for consultations. On the street, the girl felt better and enjoyed walks, because here she felt warmth and communication with the outside world. The Oriental Korean-style architecture coupled with the special weather provided a perfect combination and made for a great stay in this city. While walking, she followed the lives of the staff, observing all the processes taking place in this popular hospital. The infirmary workers were never idle, as they always had a lot of responsibilities and hard work that needed to be completed in a timely and efficient manner. Everything had to be done correctly and meet hygienic standards since the infirmary served many people. Many people worked in the infirmary as they saved thousands of lives and provided necessary care. There have been cases where patients came in with severe injuries and needed immediate medical attention. In such cases, all employees, including chief doctors, took up their duties to save the victims. They helped eliminate dangerous pain that patients could not cope with on their own and needed counseling or immediate help. One day, while walking, the girl witnessed a difficult situation and heard the screams and groans of the victims. This was difficult for the girl to perceive, since her worldview is filled with the torment and suffering that people experience. She did not understand what this feeling of constriction inside her was that prevented her from living, since every day she was faced with suffering. While in the hospital, she witnessed the suffering of other people who suffer from fatal diseases and suffer. The main condition for emergency care is sanitation, so all medications and drugs must be thoroughly disinfected and stored properly. Controlling large blood losses in critically ill patients was a difficult task, requiring constant surveillance and sanitary blood transfusions. Walking along the green lawn of the famous hospital, she was glad that she had survived, but at the same time she thought about whose life might be lost here. Thoughts of suffering did not leave her. Everything sank inside, especially in her heart when she was reminded of the torment and suffering of people. At the end of her walk, as she walked towards the entrance of the infirmary, all conversation died down as the owner of the hospital, a well-known and respected man, approached. The girl watched him enthusiastically, understanding the titanic work of this community of people under his leadership. The owner of the dream was respected and considered a noble person performing an important mission in society. He had neat hair and an intelligent, piercing gaze, giving off an aura of value and relaxation. The owner supervised and checked the work of the infirmary staff, maintaining the quality of service. Among them was the main character, Chin Hee, a little boy with amazing medical talent who treated various diseases. The girl watched their work and was delighted with the coherence and harmony of the work of the master of the dream and rank, although he was only a child. Chin Hee was not afraid of responsibility and was ready to take responsibility for surgical operations and patient treatment. Their team did incredible things to revive and bring out those who were already considered hopeless. Chin Hee was completely dedicated to his work, ready to sacrifice his life for the sake of his patients. Among the participants in the operations were many trainees who studied and recorded the skills of large doctors in order to become masters of their craft. Coming closer, the girl wanted to see what was happening in the middle of a large and dense crowd of people, which was focused on one significant goal, the treatment of people. Looking at the Chin again up close, the thought came to her that the Chin was a very handsome guy, but she would like to make friends with him because he was very talented. His absolute dedication was actually 100%. He gave all his energy in order to save another life that simply died without his help. And the owner of the dream was also very selfless and, being terminally ill, concentrated a large amount of energy and released it in order to help. Just looking at what was happening to someone would take your breath away. This was their daily routine and work. Their life from day to day. No matter how things changed, they only saved people. And they arrived before evening. They could breathe out a little and go about their business not related to work and the infirmary, since it was already late. At this time, Chin, realizing that he needed to increase the amount of his energy, took a day off and liked to go on his own to one of the lawns near the mighty trees, sit down and meditate. After working so hard, he could still train and become more powerful. Without this, it is impossible to become a real great doctor who will put an end to the deaths of people. The girl, standing behind the tree, relying on the dedication and hard work of her rank, did not understand how she could live, but never take a rest during the whole day to recuperate. Chin was definitely a very distinguished guy, as even her father, who was a powerful archer, bowed his head to him because of the help the boy provided. But they are only the same age. He has very little movement, but his body is only in the developmental stage, and he still needs to increase his strength much more. I understand that the girl was thinking what a fundamental gap in development she and the young doctor had, which was almost impossible to overcome. But he, no longer an adult, studied so hard. I understand all this. She felt a little uneasy. She decided to go about her business in order to continue to recover from the extremely difficult situations she had experienced. She was very interested in what kind of person he was, but how does he feel about ordinary matters that are not related to treating people and saving lives? The girl was very interested in how to make friends correctly. After all, they wanted more communication and acquaintance with those who could help her recover and progress. Thinking, she realized that in her entire life she had not had a single friend. It was very annoying. Her heart was breaking with suffering. All her free time, the girl upgraded her fighting skills. She lied to herself that being alone was cool and fun because she didn't want to let her father down. For her father, she always had to play the role of a good daughter, although she did not enjoy it, and she felt that she could not live differently. But in reality, she is a loner who tried to survive because of herself. This was the wrong path of development, which needed to be somehow changed in order to normalize my feelings. Having walked several tens of meters along the undulating terrain of a small forest, she leaned on the tree and froze, remembering all the moments of her life. And indeed, there were no good moments in her life when she was. This greatly worried her well-being. She was not happy about her future, where her father saw her as a warrior. And the action without reacting to anything continued to meditate and do his main job, which was constant training and increasing his strength. The fiery tongues of energy that enveloped him were constantly increasing, indicating that he was not doing all this in vain. But one day, he will become an extremely powerful patron of magic. Looking back again to look at the rank, she continued to be amazed at how he selflessly gives all his strength to stand up as the best in his business. Soon the dark night came, but a wonderful morning came. But Osret and the town adjacent to it greeted a new bright day, embracing them with its rays of the sun. The infirmary workers were back to their daily routines, caring for their patients and performing routine work. Waking up, Chin stretched sweetly and was glad because he had already done enough work, and he had a lot of time to take a walk and be himself. But then he heard one of the doctors say, "Please come here, follow me." But he really stopped looking at who was walking there. He was a magical archer whose rank saved his life and helped him progress significantly and become one of the most powerful warriors on the planet. He was not surprised. He is very happy to see his old friend, whom he helped a lot, and they were very friendly. The archer shuffled a very large amount of medicine at a time, and his strength was truly amazing. This pace of work could exhaust him. Although I wanted to believe that he could withstand such stress, Chin believed that he should wait until his daughter was cured before working so hard. As it turned out, this was an order from the Master of the Sun to pay for the treatment. Looking at the archer, the rank realized that he was perhaps the happiest person in the world, but he liked this way of life. He was very passionate about their family as they also worked very hard. But they also had nothing to envy, since they experienced a lot of troubles and suffering that had a detrimental effect on their lives. The girl's pulse stopped and her heart was pounding very hard with anxiety. She was shocked by the arrival of a stranger in the room. It was a rank. The girl decided to get out of bed to meet the guest. She immediately began to thank her for saving the world. Smiling, the rank said that it was difficult for him to accept such praise, and since they are almost the same age, they can communicate with you. In his hands was a tray with some kind of healing drink, which he wanted to treat the girl to improve her well-being. It was a gesture of his concern. He said that this tea would improve her well-being. Extending her hand, the girl is very grateful for such care and affection. She was received with care and was very surprised, since no stranger had shown her such care before. Deciding to support the girl and cheer her up, the Chin decided to continue the dialogue so that their communication would develop. Concern turned into interest in the guy. The girl signaled with her look and feelings at the moment, She stood focused, wondering if it was worth going for this opportunity and trying to be friends with such a talented and smart guy like Kem. But at that moment she exclaimed, "Friend!" And it was difficult to convey the surprise of the rank, even because of the expression on her face. The girl covered her head, deciding to ask again, "Can I call you my friend?" Very surprised, the official raised his head up a little. Realizing that everything was not happening as in her head, she began to be haunted by stress and shame that she could say something wrong that could upset the rank. She was still able to say it. This word escaped from her, but there was no response from the young, talented doctor. Continuing the conversation, the words came out of her mouth that it was her secret. She always dreamed of being a friend. She had never had this experience with anyone before. The rank's expression of surprise changed. He did not understand how a person could not have a friend. He listened warily and carefully. Realizing her situation, she lowered her fragile head, and it seemed that she was about to cry because of the events that she had experienced in such a short life. Because her powerful father traveled through the Kanho lands, she did not have the opportunity to meet children from military families. Her father lived constantly on the move and hid his status. They also trained constantly, especially a lot of archery, and also did other powerful exercises. The rank's heart was breaking. He felt how very lonely she was, and the archer he helped made a bad father. Reaching out his little magical hand, the boy decided to say, "Okay, let's be friends and get on with you," and asked if she agreed. Having cried out the truth, it seemed that she was about to lose consciousness and would not be able to behave normally, since she could not even count on such a turn of events. Wow, her dream came true. Now she had someone she could rely on and walk or talk to, revealing her soul. Holding China's hand, she asked the doctor not to tell the powerful archer everything about this, since the girl did not want to upset her father. The girl's rosy cheeks glowed with joy. She said that the rank was special, and she would forever imprint it in her memory. That surprise didn't even know what to answer. He kept up the conversation with delight, because now they were friends and could talk about anything. It seemed that they had found each other, and now nothing threatened their destinies, and they will enjoy life. Since the young doctor no longer had urgent matters, he invited his new girlfriend to play outside and do interesting things. He thought that nothing would happen if he spent the day doing nothing. They decided to play on the lawn near the hospital. They wanted to concentrate energy and strengthen each other, but the girl's body was weakened, and she needed to do this to a minimum. One day began to be replaced by another, and very soon the child had already become a teenager. Winter had already opened the door to its element and set its own rules. It was very cold. Steam came from the doctor's mouth, and he continued to meditate in thin clothes among large piles of snow. His bright eyes were directed somewhere with great delight, and he continued to meditate willingly. I can't even believe that those few months when he spent time in this world after an unsuccessful task passed so quickly and interestingly. Every single day he tried to become stronger than his former self, and therefore did not notice the passage of time, which was quietly taking everything away. It was amazing that in just a few months one could increase so much in strength and the power that saturates it. Moreover, he treated people with the help of new arts, which helped him work better and carry out his work. Also, the discovery of new energies and their concentration for combination made the doctor's power even greater. Exhaling heavily, the teenager understood that this was a place of combination of 5 ideal elements, and he was very comfortable here and really liked it. After he mastered the Chingi of the 5 elements and strengthened his body through hard training, he entered a state of synergy. It was very hard, but that fruitless path was worth it, and he did not regret a single second that he spent trying to progress. Even the flying snow falling on his head was absolutely nothing compared to the opportunities he gained during meditation. But soon his mood changed dramatically as waves of dark energy began to fill his body, and it was very strange and incomprehensible to track such frequencies in such a pure place. Shock and dust appeared in the teenager's turbulent young body. The energy was very strong, and she gave the rank ants all over his body. The impact of energy on him was very strong and weighty, and he could not reach a state in which he would feel comfortable. Looking around and trying to find the epicenter of this painful energy, the teenager looked for someone who could do this. He wonders who has such powerful energy. Wandering through the snow-capped mountains, where the temperature continued to drop, and tirelessly trying to find the epicenter of the energy, he wandered. There was no one here, but the certainty continued to hint to him that something unusual was captured here. Exhaling hard from the small amount of oxygen, the Chin could not believe that it could be his mistake, and there was no one here. Turning around and lowering his head, he said that there was nothing surprising since he was still a beginner. The teenager continued to walk like this for hours. He walked for 4 hours, exactly as much as he spent on breathing procedures to circulate internal energy. Energy was now a good level, and its use and improvement increased the guy's level. The miracle pills were completely released with energy. His memories continued to motivate him, as he does everything for a reason. At the time when he first started taking these pills, it seemed very close to him, although it had already been a long time. Chin also took many medications and drugs and continued and took off the day without rest for breathing exercises. In addition, the meditation practices through which he honed his mastery of the 5 elements, it was difficult to simulate how quickly his internal energy increased. In 6 months, it grew extremely high, and its volume was colossal, which people can possess in at least 5 years. And also today is the day when he was officially recognized as a doctor, and now he was also becoming a respected person. Further events took place in the inner, well-kept courtyard of the infirmary, where a lot of medical personnel gathered. Everyone was well-dressed and in a festive mood. 4 Tanyas immediately gathered in one place and managed the infirmary for a year. Coming closer to one of the doctors, the official was told that his place was here, since he was just starting his official work, and his status had not yet been determined. But the fact that the young intern was allowed into the infirmary hall made it clear that the rank was valued. The doctor said that this was a very bad sign for the infirmary, but the owner of the dream decided to give such an order. Because the young doctor managed to save a patient whom even the best teachers could not help, and also managed to save the life of the daughter of a powerful archer. That is why there will be a very long conference today, during which the status of the recruit's doctor will be agreed upon and recorded. He sat down in the most visible place and agreed to the start of the conference. His look was not entirely sure because he understood that in this situation not everything depended on him. Many doctors came, even from other delegations, but they wanted to see the hospital get a new doctor. Everyone looked very reserved and formal, since such events do not happen often. There was crazy tension in the air. There were many powerful leaders there, such as an acupuncturist named Sama Ben. Also present was the physical strength Tanju Toko Chonhu, who was wearing an eye patch, and also Tanja Massage Chudaha. Such an event could not have happened without the beautiful Manhwa Recap. This was the same woman who gave him sweets marinated in honey syrup and many other delicacies. Accompanying him and showing him the main offices, he said that all the doctors had an almost impeccable reputation in the infirmary. But there are no those who could dislike them. He spoke especially warmly about the Tanya of medicines. She is a specialist in making medicine, very punctual and on good terms with many large merchants, and she also has a gift for finding medicinal herbs. Chin was very happy that in the future he could join the company and become one of the masters of the infirmary. And at this moment, the owner of the dream appears. He was the owner of this infirmary and a very respected man in the community. His main quality was punctuality and very good manners. Each of the Tanja respected him very much, and demonstrating their devotion and respect, they stood up and worshipped him. Everyone did this without exception. He was a true authority for them. Entering the main office, he walked slowly and walked to his main place. As he left, his braids flowed back, although there was no wind in the room. But approaching the crown place, he takes it. But he decides to sit down, because now many issues will need to be resolved. And so now everyone was in the meeting, and it was necessary to hold a meeting at which all issues should be resolved. It seemed that everyone was happy with the conduct of this meeting, except for this doctor who did not like the rank of the doctor. Standing in the center of the meeting room, Juho took all the recorded materials and began to tell them that it was written on the agenda. Listening to Yuho's words, he was not interested in the Dragon and Phoenix conference that was about to take place. The Dragon and Phoenix convention was a Pima fighting tournament that took place all over the world. It is attended by young stars who have not yet achieved significant results and represent their clans. He continued to read that the scale of the tournament would be very large, perhaps even higher than previous years. One of the Kanjas asked for help because he did not have enough people to prepare everything. Also, one of the elders said that according to her rumors, many clans and academies will participate in the tournament, but they have a lot of talent and it will be difficult for them in these competitions. Therefore, it was necessary to prepare more carefully and underestimate your opponents, the elder said. Another Tanya, who was in charge of massage, said that she could provide working people. Tanju, associated with power, also said everything that bothered him and what needs to be done. Everyone spoke their own opinion, but their meeting went smoothly. Everything was fine. The owner of the infirmary listened to every thought. It was important for him that everyone had their say and a decision had to be made. Having dealt with all the pressing matters in order, it was time to discuss the most important thing Juho was reading. At this moment, the rank began to worry even more, because different thoughts came into his head, and he was a little scared. Next at their meeting was a decision on the position of a young rank who had demonstrated considerable medical knowledge. And each of the respected Tanjas must give their assessment of the situation and speak out. At this moment, the dream decided to quickly rise, because it had something to say. He thought he should speak first in order to set the tone for their meeting. Chin was very surprised by this turn of events and continued to watch in admiration. But the owner of the dream began his speech. He talked about the importance of developing the infirmary. But it is important to remember the past and the history of the creation and development of the hospital. He thanked everyone for their great work in organizing work in the infirmary. After all, if it weren't for them, perhaps now there would not have been an infirmary for a year. If it were not for the hard work of everyone present, the owner of the dream would not have been able to live to this day due to his illness. All the Tanjis eagerly listened to his speech, realizing how important all this was. Continuing his speech before the dance, the dream said that an idea had come to his mind that he needed to think about the future of their infirmary. That's why he decided to take on a student. This child is very shrewd and masters medical techniques that are very different from theirs. And today, he called a meeting precisely because the mastery of the rank is enough to create a new unit in the infirmary. Now he wanted all the masters to have a focused conversation and show their point of view regarding the rank and his appointment to the post of doctor. And at that moment, everyone froze and waited to see who would be the first to speak and present their facts. The sage said that a teacher must choose his student correctly, and the student in turn must translate God's efforts and worry about his mentor. Everyone stood and diligently listened to the advice. Their main law was the ban on being with each other. The sage said that he really recognizes the wisdom of this child and is confident that many of the merits in the treatment of fatal diseases belong to the rank. But they were worried that he was too small. Juho said that his medical skills and techniques are indeed at the highest level, but many have not yet been confirmed or patented. That is why the entire hospital, represented by owner's son, bears a huge responsibility on the lives of the patients. They cannot simply use unproven methods and medical techniques. The sage proposed creating a new unit when the young doctor's skill was confirmed. Listening carefully to everything that was said to him, he partially agreed with the statement because his reasoning was correct. But everything seemed to shrink inside him because it would take many years to confirm the skills. But these years cannot exist for a teacher who was terminally ill and whose life was limited. Another Tanja also started saying that the technique was relatively new and no one had ever heard of it. As she continued speaking, she was concerned that there was no literature about these techniques. Even one of the third-generation infirmaries, Hik Chan Kelsen Nogve, does not possess such powerful sciences, she said. That is why they very much doubted the young doctor. Realizing that his managers did not entirely agree with the opinion of owner's son, he felt a little uneasy. Chin also sat and was terribly nervous about his future and the future of the infirmary. Now he realized what a difficult responsibility he would have. That is why he did not want to bring up this conversation, because the situation is very unpleasant. Suddenly, Yuho approached the Tanju to give her his convincing arguments. Coming closer to one of the Tanjas, the Dr. Yuho said that he was ready to give guarantees and confirmed the doctor's skill, because he had worked with him for quite a long time. Continuing the conversation, he said that his specialization methods help test the rank's skills and true deeds. Ranks do not bring anything bad for the infirmary. Remembering the unpleasant conversation they had before, the surprise on the rank's face was very expressive. The atmosphere became increasingly tense and even more different assumptions appeared. The conference was quite difficult. Everyone wanted to do the best, but not all masters were ready to risk their impeccable reputation. They were a little hesitant about putting the young guy on a level with themselves and giving him such high realities. With unusual surprise on her face, one of the Tanya decided to say that if it is you, the official who act as the guarantor, then compromises can be found. There were no more questions in her unit about our candidate's true identity. Chin felt a little better, and it seemed that his heart rate began to decrease because they began to support him. Chin still couldn't understand why Yuho's words were enough for the Tanju to simply stop nitpicking about everything. There was a feeling in his little soul that he still did not fully understand who Juho was. Juho's conclusion eased the tension in the meeting room, and it seemed as if breathing became a little easier. After a short break, they continued their conversation. The gentleman of acupuncture also rethought his opinion about the Chin Cheong is he. It was now time to sum up this fruitful conference from that day forward. The new surgery unit will begin work. The Tanju of surgery will become Chin Chun He and write special books in which he will teach his art in the infirmary. In parallel with this, he will report and show his competence to other Tanju. The smile and happiness on Master Sun's face could not be hidden. He was really happy. Everyone rose, confirming the decision of the infirmary, and thus ended the long conversation. It was cool outside, but the sun coming out from behind the clouds brought a little warmth. After much listening and talking, the staff went outside to rest and relax a bit. As the rank went about its business to rest, someone shouted his name. The owner of the infirmary approached him joyfully to talk. The owner asked how he saw the future of the infirmary. This was a very difficult question. Chin said that he had been here for quite a long time and knew a lot, but he managed to experience something on himself. Therefore, he is very interested in how the infirmary looks in the eyes of a young doctor. Chin tried to find the right words to say everything correctly about the future of the infirmary. Song and Yuho waited for an answer from the rank. Chin still couldn't structure his thoughts and was analyzing what to answer. Finally, he decided on an answer that was like a stormy river. Master Song was very surprised, because the rank used an analogy with a river and not with an ocean or sea. Juho remained as indifferent and cold as possible during their conversation. But Chin decided to expand on his answer and give several reasons. Life can be compared to the flow of water, which begins its journey in the mountains and ends in the sea. Then the water evaporates and becomes rain, which again descends into the mountains. It would seem to be a bridge between the beginning and the end. Pirates are often found on rivers, but this does not mean that the infirmary is a pirate's nest, the official joked. Master Sun felt very happy and laughed, noticing that the infirmary resembled a place where pirates gather to disturb the river. Chin vehemently denied this claim and continued his conversation. Pirates are those people who seek happiness in conflicts with everyone who sails by. They demand money and jewelry, the official explained. Sun agreed because money and jewelry were also very important. The owner of the infirmary took the young doctor by the shoulders and came closer to ask a few questions. If you think that the infirmary is a watercourse, then you are now one of us, the leader among the pirates, said the owner. Chin did not speak completely freely, and during the ceremony he felt a tightness in his chest, breathing heavily. Tanju is different from the rank in this regard. He is responsible for the lives of all patients in the infirmary. You need to be tough and decisive. Discretion is more important than ever to avoid making yourself or your staff look bad. The owner noted that Chin would have to learn a lot in the infirmary. From this meeting, he firmly remembered that the rank is called not just a master but a benefactor, and he should try. Chin understood and accepted the advice of the owner of the infirmary and showed his agreement with a smile. The rank was interested in what a heavy load the owner of the infirmary, responsible for all departments of the institution, carried. It was getting dark, and candles were lit throughout the infirmary to prolong the short day. Chin had little time to sleep, train, and also write several books on surgery to improve the level of his unit. He had a lot of classes. His goal was to master new time management techniques. Writing the book took a long time, but he is glad that pencils were available indefinitely. Sharing knowledge with the teacher required a lot of time, and the daily routine turned out to be really difficult. Writing with pencils was faster than ink dice, and he was happy for that. Using bamboo letters helped him write his book faster. Chin was considering converting the infirmary to pencil work to improve productivity. Most of his medical knowledge could only be written down in a foreign language that no one knew. Translating medical terminology into a popular language was very difficult, because it had to be understandable to everyone. When everyone was asleep, the light was only in the room of the official, who continued to work for the benefit of the establishment. Chin continued to carry out his hard work in the hope of the support and hope of the owner of the infirmary. A few days later, they moved to the internal training area of the infirmary. This was Chin's first official non-training as a Tanj in front of the many other Tanjis who had invited him to attend. He was very happy, but understood that he would have to try very hard. And Juho continued to drag out a pass to him in order to prepare him. Chin was very worried that something might not work out for him, but he might be embarrassed. Yuho said that there is no need to communicate very much with other Tanjis because they can bring him under their control. But this was their trap, and the other Tanju wanted to show that the rank did not look exactly like a fighter and wanted to demonstrate that he still needed to study a lot. Continuing to equip the young doctor, Juho said that there is no need to worry about anything yet. It's better to relax. In the infirmary, everyone was worried about whether Chin had enough qualifications, but they wanted to check it out. Perhaps this is because even the doctors knew martial arts and could stand up for themselves. But having mastered the situation and realized that this was not so much, the rank realized that he liked it here. Smiling, Juho said that the young doctor began to speak in the words of his teacher. He can't even believe that he liked the beginning of such a difficult experiment. Juho also said that this was the only place that the owner of the infirmary really liked in terms of atmosphere. He cheerfully stretched out his smile and said that he understood everything. They had already stood here for quite a long time, and the question was brewing as to how much longer they needed to be here. This is a training suit, and in any case, it can get wrinkled or dirty. Juho said it correctly, but discipline came first for him, and he liked to be responsible for what he did. Finally, from a distance, the silhouette of a teacher began to appear with one of the combat training masters. Their training was about to begin. Pleasant sunlight flooded the training ground. Our main character was sitting on a reed stick. Yuko stood opposite him. They looked at each other in anticipation of training sparring, while two men, one of whom was a doctor, watched them. There was tension in the air as the competitors watched each other. Phew. Our hero sighed while balancing on a stick. Breathing is very important in battle. That hour, the doctor's assistant was already tense. It seemed as if space itself was condensing around him. He raised his hand and swung. He had about 7 small pebbles in his palm. But despite their size, they flew towards our hero at the speed of a bullet. Due to the high speed, the pebbles turned into glowing red stripes of light. Shinji, in turn, deftly tried to dodge them. Thanks to deft movements and concentration, the stones flew past one after another. The hardest part was dodging with the lower body. Everything worked out for the chin. In turn, the redhead did not stop for a second and continued to shower our hero with a hail of stone bullets. And now another batch was on the way to our hero. "Ugh, damn you, idiot!" he mentally screamed while dodging stone bullets flying from all sides. "He's never thrown like that before," our hero thought to himself while dodging. "Have you decided to beat me up?" thought he, watches the expression on his opponent's face. And now the fight is finally over. Both participants turned to the watching father and in turn clapped loudly, expressing their sincere impression of the battle. "Great job, said the doctor, breaking into a smile and clapping. "I completely agree with the dream," added a man standing next to him with one eye. "Foo-foo, I got a little nervous," our hero answered, out of breath after an intense fight, with a smile. "And almost got screwed because of that idiot," he added mentally to himself. With the Samje step technique, he avoided attacks without a single hesitation, absolutely naturally, like water. Is it possible to achieve such mastery in a few months? The man asked himself in surprise. If I hadn't seen everything with my own eyes, I definitely wouldn't have believed it. His physique is not exactly suitable for martial arts.